Did some tree planting yesterday in the morning with Juan out here at our larger 6-acre site, and specifically we were planting English walnut, northern hardy pecan, and shellbark hickory, and they were planted in a way to address a successional plan to address the dying of the white pines in a certain area. I want to talk about why they're dying and what's going on there, and design what's next without interfering with the fate of all these things. Let me explain. I'm over here at the northeastern corner of this 6-acre property in a stand of white pines, a really beautiful stand that I should be very clear, I'm not interested in seeing these go. I'm not like, oh, I want to cut them all down, let me get rid of them. What's happening in here is a pretty clear picture that without intense intervention, it has set the fate of these pines pretty strongly. They're almost certainly going to pass away in here, and the reason for that is this friend right here and their brothers, cousins, and aunts and uncles to the north of this whole little glade. This is black walnut, Juglone's nigra. This is a native, beautiful tree. I mean, this one in particular is an incredible timber-form tree. And this produces juglone in the soil, and that can affect negatively the growth of other trees around them. White pine is particularly sensitive to juglone, and we can see where this black walnut, very strong, healthy character. The white pine just to the north of it died recently. The other white pines are starting to get more and more scraggly. The leaves are getting yellower and yellower. Some of them are here for a little while, but overall I believe white pine's fate is to slowly be erased and be replaced by black walnut and other characters that are adaptable or compatible or even happy with what the black walnut puts off in the soil. So you can see here amongst the debris of another white pine that succumbed and collapsed recently. This one just fell on its own. I bucked it up and laid it out into a very rough sketch of where a hugel mound will be here. A few years ago we added cultivar grafted pawpaws. Wherever there's a wooden stave here, there's a young pawpaw growing. You see the leaves just popping up right there. Pawpaw is extremely tolerant, if not extremely excited about being under black walnuts. This whole area is very juglone-y, and they're growing along. They're small, but they take a little while to come up anyway. There's another one. There's about 10 pawpaws in here, and so under the deep shade of this black walnut, as a successional plan, without removal of the walnut, without the killing of the pine, we can just let that happen how it's going to happen. Pawpaw can start growing in the shade. I'd like to have a more complex successional plan in motion where, so long as it's compatible with partial shade, some of the slightly sunnier glades amongst the edge of the white pine area in here, can we set in motion a very serious food producing tree system that's compatible with what's going on. And we can. So here we're on the east side of the white pine glade. You can see this tree is very, very satisfied with life and very happy. I think this will be a long-lived white pine, and that's awesome. The black walnut on our neighbor's property line is not close enough to have huge influence on it. And so to the south and east of that, underneath this cherry that's starting to pass away, I think this cherry might be having some negative interaction time with the walnuts to the north. We're finding sunnier glades here to add in the next layer of succession. So here is a pit and mound planting of a northern pecan. This will leaf out relatively soon. It'll grab the sun that's available to it in the nice big bright sky here to the south. It's not a full sun position, but that's a good stroke of sun. That's enough for it to grow. This style of planting is something that Juan and I use extensively, where we'll dig a little bit of a hole where a new tree is going to go, especially a tap-rooted tree where I don't want to cut the roots a lot. We'll dig a little bit until we hit resistance, plant them out a little bit more shallow than we'd like, and then rob soil from right nearby to build up. So there's a lot of nice rich topsoil here. This young tree is growing, getting ready to leaf out for the season, and we can say, well, I'll see your northern pecan and raise you 3 butternut squash. We'll get those nice and deep into the duff. This is to the south of the pecan. They can start to grow. In fact, I'll get a little bit better ground contact. Some rains are coming. It doesn't look like there's a freeze for the rest of the season. We'll see. But these can green up and grow and sprawl out towards the sun. And here in this little grove, as we get closer to the black walnuts, we move towards a planting decision that is based on very much juglone tolerance. So there are pawpaws we put in here that crop pretty darn heavily. They're very happy. There's a Korean bee tree that we dug up from a neighbor's down the road spot. that was growing underneath black walnuts and seems very, very happy here. And just to the north of all that is another northern pecan. This one's just in a hole right there, and that can grow. There's some ash next to it. I think this ash will pass away. It's a very competitive spot for them right here, but I believe in them. They can do it, and we have pruners. We can always prune things as needed to chop and drop and feed and release it to the canopy. We had some English walnuts that were a little too big to ship. Here's a nice one here, in a nice lull with some rotting logs around it. This is definitely tolerant of Juglone. It's a Juglone family as well. This is Juglone's regia, and so it can grow with the black walnut. Whatever root exudates it puts out is compatible with the pawpaws that are nearby. These are some very, very happy trees. They're young, but very productive, and the fruit is great quality. The only thing that's missing with this English walnut is a butternut squash. Always. somehow these seeds called to me yesterday, said plant us, plant us, plant us. So I went out and got kabocha and delicata and butternut squash, and we just went to town planting them. I don't know if it's too early, but something just says intuitively, get the trees in, that's all well and good, but butternut squash for sure. Northern pecan with a little bit of butternut squash. There we go, of course. We'll have to maintain, if they work as well as they can work, this will be competitive to the pecan, so there'll be a fair bit of leaf snipping and feeding back to the tree throughout the summer. Or we get a frost in the 3rd week of May, and I don't have to worry about weeding those out at all. We've got our northern boundary here of brush wall next to very, very low-tech fencing, and just south of that, just on the inside of the property line, are Shellbark hickory. Those are the ones that make just absolutely monstrously large nuts. They're tiny right now, but that's how they do. For example, here's one, but I know this will grow. And they're in and amongst some black-cap raspberries, which are good at deflecting deer browse. So that'll be as much fencing as they get, is basically a thorny layer around them and a bunch of brush to make it a little harder for the deer to hang out right on the edge. But they're every 4 feet, which is a little bit closer than people would probably plant shellbark, but some might die. Some might grow really well. Maybe every single one grows really well and we harvest every other one for firewood. Lots of different pathways, but the more you can plant, the better. We put in a total of about, I think, 10 shellbark hickory, maybe 10 or 15 northern pecan, and another 10 or so English walnuts. All trees that get huge, huge within their lifetime, but we can deal with that later. That's a problem for maybe Zelda's generation or the one after that, what to do with these 4-foot diameter nut-bearing trees that are in the way of other things that they want to do. That's a problem they can figure out. But what's interesting is we've got the influence of black walnut that's in this landscape, which I am not going to go and kill every walnut and rip the roots out in order to get rid of the juglone. Walnut's evil, they gotta go. They're here, they want to be here. The squirrels very clearly want black walnut, shagbark hickory, bitternut hickory. They plant them excessively throughout the landscape. And so how do we dip in on saying yes to what's going on anyway, and here's this additional layer? And I think more nut trees that are juglone tolerant, along with the pawpaws and the black-cap raspberries. So now we've set in motion a couple successional pathways that this landscape can take without any aggressive interventions. Very, very low cost. We grew the trees ourselves, so that was $0. The squash seed was $1.45. So we do have $1.45 in this project, and we'll have to see what comes of it. We might have 1,000 pounds of nuts annually for the rest of our lives, starting in about 15 years, 20 years, well, maybe 30. Again, Zelda will figure out what to do with them. And white pine friends, we love you. We hope the best for you. I think I've got a feeling of what might happen here, but even as they pass away, these white pines continue to be wonderful characters in the landscape. So we won't preemptively cut them because we see them dying. We're not going to cut the walnuts because they're going to kill the pine. But as the pines pass away, so here's one that passed a couple years ago, relatively balanced and upright, and so that's just a massive amount of habitat. There's wild bees that can live in there, pileated woodpecker. As the pileated woodpecker makes bigger and bigger holes, little chickadees and titmouse friends can have their lives in there. So this is turning into a wonderful amount of habitat. Big old walnut just to the north. It's going to continue to influence this, and you can see another dead pine, and dying pine. So It's beautiful. It's sad. I would love the white pines to feel great in here, but there's some good context further in the woods where they're really strong, and I'll probably cut down little walnuts that show up. But this is the direction things are going. How do we drop in and swim along with the river of fate rather than fighting against it?